We are live on YouTube, and I'm also recording this as well on my hard drive. So we've got a backup just in case something goes sideways. And I think we are all good to go. So, okay, let me turn the volume down. Yes, and get the echo. Okay, great. All righty. So thank you all so much for joining, whether you are joining me live or if you're going to watch the replay. I wanted to let you know that I will be seeing questions in the chat on YouTube if you are watching live. So if there are any questions, I will definitely address them to Paulette. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's been a while since I've done a live interview, and I'm super excited to introduce you today to Paulette Ensign. Paulette, and if you've been following me on YouTube, on Facebook and our groups, in the emails, you've seen me talk about this topic that I'm so excited about, which is book sales and content licensing. I've been talking about it so much because it's something that none of us can afford not to know about. It's that important to our business. As the climate is changing, economically is changing, the things that we are doing are going to have to also adjust and pivot as things keep changing in the marketplace. And while I love Amazon, I think it's a great way to get your idea out there. As all of you who've been following me all know, I help you, many of you, I've worked with you directly to help you get your books on Amazon. I think it's a great place to get started with. But as you always heard me say, if you've been following me, is that I always look at Amazon as a fulfillment center. Not necessarily, they're not your publisher. They're a fulfillment center. It's great to get things started, but we got to go beyond that. And that's what this conversation is about today, which is beyond Amazon, smarter, more lucrative ways to sell your books, booklets, IP, whatever you've got going on. So first, I want to say thank you so much, Paulette, for joining us today and giving us your time. And let's kick it off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got
Okay.
started in the game.
Rodney, it is always a pleasure to chat with you, and we've had some real great chuckles together almost every time. No, probably every time we've ever talked. And I think that it's worth mentioning how you and I reconnected not that long ago, because it really makes a point about how marketing can work sometimes. So apparently, when I went into LinkedIn one day, and I will expand on what a little more about me in a moment. I want to lead with this though, that I went into LinkedIn as I am wont to do several times a week at the very least, and I had posted something, and I saw that you had made a comment on that post. And I said, this is a name I don't recognize. And I dug around a little bit because I did see a domain name email address. So that's not rocket science. And when I saw you were all about coloring books, I immediately reached out to you and I said, I want to talk to you. And then when you and I did get on a call the very next day, I started to just introduce myself to you, and you stopped me immediately, and you said, "No, no, I know who you are. I've been following you for at least 15 years, and I even bought something from you." And it took everything I had not to say what took you so long. However, other than that piece of what I see as humor, um, the fact is that that stuff happens. And that had I not had that post up there and had, all of the little bits and pieces not fallen into place the way they did, you and I would have missed out on phenomenal opportunities that you and I have created in the past month and a half, and where we're nowhere near the end of that for sure. So, Rodney, I thank you. I'm not going to allow, at least within my own actions and decisions, to let that kind of a gap occur again with you and me. So, we're on it now. We came to an interesting point very quickly because of the vision that I had, and apparently you did too. And that was about looking at how we might be able to joint venture, how we might be able to bring your expertise and mine together to create something for each of our followers. and that you have unique expertise that's different than mine, and that it really does blend and mesh. That's ESH, not mess, but mesh together quite well. And I will be bringing tips and how to utilize tips to your audience. I've already started doing that. And I'm going to be bringing your coloring book creations and those skills to my audience and beyond. And that's how it works. That's how it works. And by the way, we do have a really fun time brainstorming, and I will say something that I think is obvious to Rodney, and he'll go, "Oh, yeah, right, that would work." Now, I make that point because he's way above average intelligence, and so am I. And I say that factually, not boastfully. But the fact is, there's stuff each of us does not yet know. That's the entry point when I start talking about tips, because people say to me, "What's tips other than what you give somebody in a restaurant when they've served you well?" So, Rodney, you think I ought to start with telling our people here what tips are in my definition?
Why not? Let's go for it.
Yeah, because otherwise we're talking a language that is not necessarily fully understood. And I'll tell you how I got to this too. A tip is a how-to tip, telling a reader or a listener or somebody that is sitting or standing in front of you how to do something. And I am someone who, as a former East Coaster in the United States, has been known to be kind of succinct at times. And tips fit my language and my wiring perfectly. I want to give you an example of a tip right off the bat so you have some idea of what I'm talking about. So here we go. I was formerly a professional organizing consultant. So I'm going to give you a tip about a way to get organized that you may or may not have thought of. Take the biggest thing out of the pile first. It immediately shrinks the pile and motivates you to keep going. Now that applies to paper, it applies to laundry. Imagine what came out of the dryer and it's stacked on a chair someplace, headed toward avalanching until you take out that big, luscious robe. And all of a sudden, that pile shrank. Now, no matter how brilliant any of us is, you just might not have thought about that. Plain and simple. It's not that it's rocket science, but it really has saved lives at times. Can you imagine that your partner, if you have one, is saying, "Why is the laundry still sitting there?" And you're figuring out, you're kind of, shuffling your feet parenthetically and like that. And you say, "Well, I just didn't get to it." And your partner comes along and pulls out the robe. And you go, "Yeah, now, okay, now that's more approachable for sure." So, those tips, you've got unique expertise. When you put together a series of how-to tips, based on what's on the hard drive between your ears, that's the only place that needs to be a reference source. You're going to have one of three possible responses coming back to you, either that you know or you just managed to assume accurately. The recipient hearing or listening or reading that information is either going to find it's brand new information to them, or it's information they knew and forgot. They stored it in the archives back here and they haven't used in a while. Or it's confirmation that an expert just told me something that I already knew. R&I hot stuff. All three of those responses are valuable. Every one of those three. So that's what a tip is about. And we're going to be talking today about tips and how not only those small sound bites are monetizable big time, big time. And that most of the people that I come in contact with think, well, it's not enough information. I mean, I know all this stuff. Yeah, you do. And like anything else, I want to give you another example of something. Imagine you're on your first date with somebody. Think back, some of you, a while, or maybe it was last night. But at any rate, you're on a first date with somebody and you feel compelled to tell that person everything about your life history. And I mean everything. Do you think that that's appropriate? Do you think that that's appealing? Do you think it's going to be a successful date?
Mhm.
All of those questions come answered no. Too much too soon doesn't work. Does not work in most contexts. So, starting with those sound bites, they are easily digestible. I love to make food analogies.
Mhm.
They're easily digestible and it allows for easier, better learning,
Mhm.
especially if something is brand new. If
Mhm.
you had a 500-page book that was the first thing somebody approached wanting to learn about your knowledge, you are not serving them well. You are
Mhm.
absolutely overloading them and making it much more difficult. So, back to you, Rodney. What else can we talk about today about tips?
Well, let's go through our questions. So, once so okay, let's back it up. First of all, I completely understand what you're saying about if you are writing a book that has a lot of information in there and the person who is trying to quote unquote consume it can become overwhelmed. Not so much, well, and I'll say this too, in the times we live in right now, where there's so many different forms of media always vying for our attention, for many people staying focused on something long enough to not only absorb it, but actually take action on it can be challenging. I'm going to speak more for me than general, but I kind of feel that's what I'm getting more than anything.
I agree.
So being able to repackage
hmm
our existing content into a variety of different forms that meet people where they are
Yeah, yeah.
is incumbent upon us as creators, educators, um, if you want to go so far as to say servants to the people here
Right.
to be able to help them to digest the information.
Yeah,
So, what we're talking about here is not that all of your IP should be turned into tips related products,
right.
but if it's applicable to your audience, and I think for everyone it is, it's a great appetizer. It's
Yeah, and I want to reframe that because where you're headed is there's a bridge there. In my experience and observations, yes, a book is touted as the golden entrance to credibility. Now, when I start with tips, that's what I do. I start with tips because more often than not, what I see with authors, with subject matter experts, is frequently they forget what the basics were when they entered that area of expertise. And their book reflects that. Translation into simple English is books tend, in my experience, to start too advanced for people who are first coming to that area of expertise. So I'm not saying don't do a book. What I'm saying is the book, yes, but second, not first. So that, and some of you are similar in personality style to me insofar as I don't read the manual first. Either I go in and start something and go as far as I can go, and then I hit a wall, and then I go, where's the quick start? Because whether it's software or a new appliance in your kitchen, there typically is a quick start that comes for people like me and probably many of you. So that's what the TIPS products are about. It is intended as a quick start and certainly not the end. It's the beginning of what can be an entire product line based on starting with those tips and expanding on them so that once people have said, gee, these tips made it so much easier to learn. I wonder what else the author has. That's just plain simple good business. Because at that point, the the consumer of that information has gotten their feet wet and now they feel more trusting of you as a resource and they feel more confidence about looking into what's more information about this. So look at all of what's accomplished by those tips. It's an introduction to your area of expertise. It's a trust builder, and I got a feeling this isn't the first time you've heard about building trust. This is a very easy, simple way, basic way to have somebody come on board and be part of your community indefinitely. And all of that. And yes, you can sell these. So not only does it market you and your business and your expertise, you can also get paid handsomely for it, even though it's a tips booklet.
I did. I love it. I love it. So let's move right into, because I know that's the one thing that everyone here watching live and or watching the replay wants to know is show me the money. Where is where is the money? So
Believe me, that's where it started for me too. It did.
so there are two areas we're going to focus on a little bit. We're going to talk about bulk sales and we're going to talk about licensing.
Hmm.
So when we talk about bulk, because I know that's the one thing that I know for many of my audience, we've talked about quite a bit, although my mind has been dramatically expanded in the area of licensing. So we're going to cover that as well. So when we say bulk sales, like 10 or 100 copies at a time, is that what bulk sales is? Is that what that means?
No, that's a poor excuse for bulk sales. Um, that's almost not worthwhile to even look at. What my experience and my teaching is about is showing people how to make sales in the thousands and tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands in one transaction. And bulk sales is a wholesale transaction so that it implies, in my definition and how I define and distinguish between bulk sales and content licensing. Bulk sales refers to something that is produced, that is tangible, that gets delivered to a company's loading dock so that it is bulk and you're making a sale on it. And think in terms of when you go to any of the big box stores that have quantities of things that you in the past might have only bought one unit. You might have bought one jar or one can or one bag of something. And as soon as you talk about having several cases that you're buying at a time, all of a sudden, because the volume goes up, more that you're buying, the price per can or unit goes down. And it's a beautiful thing. It's absolutely a beautiful thing because when someone, a decision maker at a company or a nonprofit membership association, buys these large quantities, they are using your material with full permission. You sold it to them to help them expand their business. And simultaneously, by the way, they're expanding yours too. So they are expanding your reach and your bottom line. And all of that means you are helping people by doing that because the company or the association is reaching more people and giving it away because the company and the association are using it to further their own business of either making more revenue, bringing in more members to an association, something that has to do with increasing their revenue. Now, can I tell you please about how I got into this business? Because this is a really fascinating story to me in many places along the way in the past 34 years of being in this business, I fell into things. And sometimes it was pothole, but other times it was, oh, look at this. I can do business this way instead.
Yep.
34 years ago, 1991. Is that the right number? 91. And I think it was 34 years ago. Um, I was a professional organizer at that point, early in the industry of that kind of service. And I was definitely loving being an organizer. And I was involved as an organizer for about 16 years. And in the process, I climbed the volunteer leadership ladder. So by the time that 1991 had come around, I was national president of the association. I tell you that for a specific functional reason. I had access at that point to any of the office supply manufacturers and distributors, any of the storage containers manufacturers or distributors. What I did not have was knowledge because I had never worked in a corporation, thank the goddesses. I had come out of academia. The only paper I have for any of my three careers is I taught string instruments in public elementary schools, violin, viola, cello, and bass. The other two careers I made up, including being an organizer. So, at any rate, toward the end of the early 90s, the sales cycle for organizing services and speaking was getting longer and longer, and I had formed these crazy habits called eating and paying the rent. And I was not keen on breaking either of them. I have this belief that the universe provides. And lo and behold, somebody walked past me holding a tips booklet on how to improve your business communication skills. And I looked at that and I said, oh, I can certainly stand improving my business communication skills. And I'll bet you anything I could do one of these on organizing tips. Keep in mind, I had no experience of publishing anything, and I had about two nickels to rub together. So I was not particularly flush financially. However, I am a firstborn, so therefore, if there's a gap and it looks appealing, I'm jumping right into it. I don't care that nobody else has blazed that path yet. I'm a firstborn. Yes, that's me. My two younger sisters, not so much. If it's not there, that's okay. It's not supposed to be there. At any rate, I proceeded and wrote 110 ideas for organizing your business life because I'm not going to write 101 like everybody else. That's not going to differentiate me. And by the way, I ran out of ideas at 110. So since I didn't have any real money to spend, I could not buy advertising, which turned out to be a blessing for sure. And I figured out how to make this happen. And what I did was I took a copy of a very short run of printed booklets of mine and copied from the big fat directory on the reference shelf in the local library. I copied down names and contact information of magazine editors. This booklet was so generic that the world was my oyster. So I sent a copy and a cover letter to about 100 different magazine editors to excerpt from my booklet without limitation into articles they would write, as long as they promised that they would put the contact information and a $5 price. That started an amazing experience. White tubs from the post office 6 days a week, full of envelopes, each of which had money in it. I mean, yeah. Now, I sold 50,000 copies that first year, one at a time. And some of those envelopes had international checks in them that I couldn't deposit because the service charge on it was higher than what the face value of the check was. So I'm going through these envelopes and taking the money out because I didn't want to tempt a high school kid that I had hired to help me do the administrative part of this. Taking the money out one day and I go, $5, $5, $5, $1,000, $5. Wait a minute. There was a check for $1,000 in there, and I had no idea what this person thought they were buying. So I had to call him. And it turns out he was an electrical manufacturer's rep firm in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He had nothing to do with organizing. Nothing. However, his check for $1,000 cleared my account really well, easily and fast. And he said to me, I saw an opportunity to buy one copy of your booklet on some publication that had 9 lines describing the booklet. Didn't even have a sample of a tip. He said, I loved the booklet, and I decided I wanted to use your booklet as this year's holiday greeting to all of my personal and professional contacts. I said, well, keep talking. So I ended up selling him 2,500 copies of that booklet. And he said to me, could we have our name and phone number on the cover? This was 1992. There were no websites, there was no internet. I said, sure. I had no idea how, but I figured it couldn't be rocket science. He said, I got one other big favor to ask. And I'm thinking, uh oh, this is going to evaporate. Uh oh. He said, Would it be okay with you if we leave your name and contact information in the booklet? I think that would be just swell. You're paying me to market and promote me? Absolutely. From that Friday's conversation to Monday, my entire business model changed. You could no longer get only a single copy of my booklet. You could only buy in bulk. And that, my friends, is how I fell into doing bulk sales. It was not a formal education. It was not anything other than somebody saying, I want to buy 2,500 copies from you, and here's why. And by the way, I did get additional bulk orders from people who received that distribution. So that's how I fell into this. And I've been doing bulk sales and content licensing, which we'll get into in a minute too. It might have been a long tail story. However, I felt that you deserve to hear a piece of reality about how this stuff can happen and does.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love about and thank you first of all for that story. And I want to say that well, that's when I first connected with you. Was I bought a booklet from you on organizing when I was starting my business because I you were focusing on entrepreneurs at that point and how to organize ourselves. So that's how I got introduced to you. I want to say something though about the booklet
Mhm.
structure is again, besides it being um, a quicker, more viable way for an audience who may not go through our entire coloring book or our entire written book, but it's a great, like I said, appetizer to get things started. It's easy to hold. It's easy to digest, but also from a publishing perspective, it's um, less expensive to print.
Yep.
And even though we live in a world where everything now is PDF this and PDF that, I still have respect for having something tangible in my hand to hold.
Hmm.
And so while I know we're all are all, we everything is digital this and AI this and we listen to that, but the tactile
Hmm.
experience of something physical and our booklet can be the entree, the appetizer to the entree of our full book or what have you. So
And I want to challenge the absolutes that I heard you throw into that. Um, everybody and all is not a true statement, and I am not accusing you of being a liar. What because that's the assumption that people have of the difference of what's fad, what's the standard. It depends, like so many other things. It depends. And the example that I like to make a point of, imagine that you have your expertise as a caregiver and you also have a parent or two who are still alive. And you're a baby boomer. So that means that your parents are really up there in numbers and age. And you're looking for a facility for them to live. And it may start off with independent living and then go to assisted living. And as those steps are required, well, you're fine as a baby boomer with accepting a PDF. No problem, but your mother or your father are much more comfortable accessing something they can hold in their hand and flip the pages. So that's why, in that situation, and if that's your area of expertise or something similar or comparable to that, you're going to want both. You're going to want to sell, which is a licensing deal, the PDF. You're going to rent out the use of your content in exchange for payment. And it's not for a single copy, it's for a whole lot of copies. And the printed version for your mom or your dad or some other loved one, or not loved, but you want to take care of putting them someplace where you feel comfortable about, as comfortable as you can be, and they will too. They want to read something that they hold in their hand. So it's a both and, not an either or.
and to add to that, one of the samples that you showed us was also children.
Yep.
And one of your clients, one of the booklets that you showed us was for a lady who did a coloring booklet.
Yep.
for kids to get them off of or to wean them off from being so technology dependent.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that happened, this happened, and it was ironic. My business, fortunately, was pretty much unscathed during COVID, for which I'm eternally grateful. And I know that's not the case for everybody. However, the kicker of it was that this particular client she had interviewed everybody involved with the Sesame Street workshop as her dissertation for her educational doctorate. And I was nervous when I looked at the book because it was full of interviews, the book that she wrote as a result of those interviews. So I was breathing a sigh of relief when I saw that there was one page in her book that was intended for parent consumption. And that's where I took where I created the tips from, because we do use other resources that subject matter typically already has, whether it's articles or it's a book or two or transcripts from interviews or things like that to create the tips. So that's the source material. But I want to hold this up again and show you what this is. 52 tips for parents. Guide your child to safe TV and electronic media. This is what she was ready to launch during COVID, when we were so tuned in to being able to get onto Zoom and to get onto other learning tools, and where school was held to the best of its ability online. So the timing was a little bit off. However, the fact that we did have this coloring booklet was a, was a saving grace. And by the way, a booklet is different than a book. And I say that because it can be a very easy oops to just assume that they're synonymous, that they're the same thing. It really makes a difference. And what I have suggested to people, the easiest way to remember that I deal in booklets, Paulette, booklet,
Mhm.
the you know, that's probably one of the easier ways that I can offer to you to keep that in mind. What do
Perfect.
we got next on the list there,
Perfect. Okay. And also want to just let everyone know that I do see your questions here on YouTube chat, so we will address them in just a little bit. We want to continue with the flow of our conversation. So now we're going to move into talking about a question that many people may have. As you now, I want to address something here. You did a very strategic strategy with your booklet by sending it out to magazines or editors who wrote about and extracted from your booklet. And then as a result of that, that then created the avalanche of sales that you were able to receive.
And all kinds of things that on my best day of cold calling, which is not something I enjoy anyway,
Mm-hmm.
could never have created open doors the way this campaign did.
Mm-hmm. So for those listening, the first question many are going to ask is, well, I don't know anyone, or I don't know where to find people to then send my booklet to, or what have you. What suggestions would you have for them? If I don't have any contacts, who would buy this?
I cannot tell you how many times I have heard people say to me, I have no contacts. And my response to that, first and foremost, is, and listen carefully, I know you believe that to be true. And that is true. They believe that to be true. And I'm not being a wise guy about it, even though it sounds like it. The fact of the matter is, you have no idea who knows who among the people you do know. And you have a limited, and I'm not just saying you, me too, for sure. Me too. I have not loved going to networking events. They frequently are tedious and time consuming. And once in a rare while, I mean the amount of time and energy and having to put on professional clothing in a lot of places does not bring back the return for me. So what I have suggested, again, a little bit of a story here, that may be a comfortable way, in fact, if not even an enjoyable way to market yourself. I've come up with an acronym, and it is, well, actually a framework, I think is probably a better way to describe it. You may be a dog owner. I'm not. I'm a cat person. Nevertheless, you may be a dog owner and you know that you have to make sure that your dog gets a walk X number of times a day, 3 times, 5 times, whatever it is. And you've lived in the same place for 25 years, and you know that there's a neighbor 3 doors down, excuse me, who you do the perfunctory wave when she comes out and walks her dog in the morning too, but you don't know each other at all. And you're thinking to yourself, maybe now that you're hearing me suggest this possibility, gee, wouldn't it be interesting to get to know this person? I don't know her any other way other than the smile and the wave and the dogs barking at each other. So you say, we've lived next 3 doors down from each other for all this time. How about we get together for a beverage sometime? She's game. Your dog and you have not barked at her. And you get together, and the inevitable question comes up, well, what do you do? How do you spend your time? And you've just finished completing a project that's your expertise. Might be a tips booklet, might be something else. You're still enthused. You're visiting with this person. Share with them what you've been doing. Just share with them. Get that exuberance all over them, which I don't think is going to be a stretch for you. Then they say, what are you doing? And you've told them about whatever it is that you've been doing, and then help. And the comment that I often get is, well, I don't think they're going to be the buyer. And I respond with, how do you know? You don't know them, remember? Now, here's a couple of things that come out of just those three things of visit, share, and help. I like to ask people first, how do you feel when you've helped somebody? Rodney, well, how do you feel when you've helped somebody?
I feel good.
He said with a straight face. Rodney, how do you feel when you've helped somebody?
No, seriously, when I help someone, I feel good. I mean, it helps me, it makes me feel good to know that what I share with them actually helps them get something, whether no matter what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I pull some guilt on people and I go, would you deny somebody the opportunity to feel good? And, that sounds kind of rude to me.
Right,
This is all humor, and yet it's true.
right,
Because at no time am I saying that four-letter word, SELL. I'm not saying that. You are there to help them. So
right.
now let's take this scenario just another step further. Your next door neighbor says, well, she's watching what your product is and listening to you. She likes you, first of all. We don't need to know why, but she likes you. And she's interested in what you've done because this is different. This is not a book, it's a booklet with tips in it. And that person's thinking, and she says to you, I've got a fourth cousin, 12 times removed, who's the senior VP of marketing at the Southeast Asia division of this blue chip company. He'd be all over this. Would it be okay if I introduce you guys?
Hmm.
Probably not a lot of hesitation in your answer.
Hmm.
You got nothing to lose and everything to gain, including satisfaction, because somebody helped you so that you can help somebody else.
Exactly.
Because that is what this is all about. It's about helping.
Yeah, it's about helping. Something that I say all the time. Actually, I just published an article about this on my LinkedIn channel as well as here on YouTube
Hmm.
about what you just got through saying. I'm always saying this to my, to my members and my students is tell people who you are, what you've done, and people, and you just, I've created a book, or I've created a booklet. People automatically, next question is, oh, curiosity. What's it about? What's the topic on? And then you tell them about it. Or if you've got it with you, show it to them. if the person's interested, they may want to buy it off you off the spot or say, hey, I have a cousin or a sister or a brother or whatever that's got a kid or what have you that would love this. I think what happens for a lot of us is that we get caught up in this idea that I am selling, i.e., I'm pushing something.
Or I'm asking for a favor.
Oh,
That's another one that couldn't be more opposite.
yeah.
Couldn't be more. And I also want to jump in real fast when you just made reference to single copy sales. What I recommend strongly is if you're not on Amazon, and listen carefully because this is the full extent of my support of your connection with Amazon. Get your publications, whatever they are, onto Amazon for the single copy sales, just for single copy sales. So you're not doing fulfillment of single copies and you're not advocating the purchase of a single copy. Typically, with bulk sales and content licensing, the only distribution of single copies are to well vetted bulk decision makers,
Mhm.
where you provide one to somebody who needs to kick the tires, who needs to see what the value, what the quality is of your production. Is it going to be high enough quality to represent an organization sending it out? That's the only time you're involved, from my perspective, of focusing on single copies. Now, that whole thing I did the first year I was in business, I did that because I didn't know any other way that would accommodate my lack of finances and accommodating the fact that I didn't know people.
Mhm.
So therefore, I got to know a lot of people, 50,000 of them, in fact.
That's it. Fantastic.
So, yeah. And by the way, I think this is a good moment to share this soundbite that I love to share with people because it amazes me as much as it amazes the listener. In 34 years, cumulatively, I have personally sold well over 2 million copies of that content in various languages and formats without spending a penny on advertising. Now, do not attempt to multiply 2 million times 5 because the 5 was a single copy price. No, I have not made $2 million from that venture. However, I am certainly not scraping bottom. I have never missed a meal. I've always had a roof over my head, clothing, gas in the car, all those things that really make for a very complete life and money left over. So I want to be full disclosure on this. It can be a very easy assumption. I don't know about you, but very often when I make assumptions, I'm wrong. So I invite you to be mindful of that as well. What else you want to ask me, Rodney?
So let's switch gears and now, not, well, switch gears, but the second part of the conversation is
Yeah,
licensing. Let's talk about licensing.
yeah,
And how does that differ from bulk book sales?
great. I am happy to create that bridge to make the distinction. And licensing is renting out the use of your content. And one of the easier ways, and I'm going to give you several examples so that you can really start to see and understand what the difference is. Imagine you own an apartment building. You own the whole building and you rent out each of the apartments and you provide a legal document called a lease. That lease says what the occupant of the apartment that you're renting to them can do and what they cannot do as an occupant of that place. And it says how much they're going to pay you, when they're going to pay you, what happens if they don't pay you, and all of those do's, don'ts, and in betweens. The same exact thing is true with your content. It is renting out. You still own it, just like you still own the building. You still own your content. You are allowing some other entity, a person or an organization, to use it for a certain period of time. What they can and cannot do, what they are responsible for, what the consequences are if they break those understandings, and that it can be renewed. The agreement can be renewed, and what the terms are for renewing it. Did the rent go up? Did it stay the same? Those things end up being business decisions. I want to give you a couple more examples that you might find a little even easier to understand. When you see all the merchandise that comes once a Disney movie has been released, all those images and products that come from the participants in the movie. It might be really terrific looking fuzzy slippers that have Mickey Mouse on the front. It might be a shirt. It might be clothing of various kinds. It might be games. All of those things that have images reflecting the movie that is owned by the film company are being rented out to the manufacturer. It's being licensed for use by the distributor. So exactly the same idea, the same functions. So you've seen plenty of that. Those are licenses. Anytime you see an image, a graphic, a characterization of something or somebody that was in the film,
Mhm.
think in terms of professional athletic teams. Their logos are on equipment and clothing. Same deal. The owner of that intellectual property, of those logos, of those images, is rented out to the manufacturers and the distributors.
Mhm.
So, on all that clothing and all that equipment, it's being used with permission and paid for the opportunity to use that. So, next time you happen to walk past somebody wearing a sweatshirt with a particular team that you're aware of with their logo on it, that's a licensing deal.
Mhm.
When you come out of a movie with your kids or your grandkids or neighbors or whatever, and next thing you know, you see all kinds of ads for those Disney characters. What about Barbie? All kinds of merchandise that came out of that movie. Same thing. It's a licensing deal. So, what do you want to ask me about that now? Anything more?
So, would you share your story about your licensing deal that you
I
had with
with the catalog company?
the catalog company? Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any of you who have been on the planet long enough to find the name Lillian Vernon catalog familiar to you? They had a representative from the company be a member of that organizing association that I mentioned to you that I had the good fortune to be ultimately national president. Well, I had just finished my booklet when we had the next annual conference of that association, and I could hardly wait to show that representative the booklet. 110 ideas. I made a little modification. 110 ideas for organizing your household, because as it turned out, all those tips could very easily be modified, very little to also accommodate getting organized at home. Just like I said to you about take the big fuzzy robe out of the laundry, out of the dryer. So I went over to David, who was Lillian's son, one of her two sons, and I said, David, I'd love to show you something that just came off the press. He's standing there, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm a former East Coaster. David is a dyed-in-the-wool Manhattanite, and he's talking faster than I could ever talk. And he's looking at this booklet, and I'm standing there just listening carefully. And he's talking a mile a minute, and he says, this is great. You ought to license us to write to print 250,000 copies of this booklet. Charge us somewhere between a nickel and a dime a unit. That would be great. As soon as he came up for air, I said, David, I was just thinking about that. The unspoken part was while you were talking and I was listening is when I was thinking about that. So, because I didn't know anything. However, he gave me all the information I needed, which is a lesson for you all right now. Lots of times, people will give you all the information you need, and when you're paying attention, makes your life much easier and easier to provide what they want because they just told you. They just told you. So I countered on the price. He said between a nickel and a dime. 7.5 cents is right in the middle. He said, yeah, that's nice. A nickel or no sale. So I did the math very fast. Came out to $12,500 for doing nothing more than I already had done. The mechanics of that transaction, I provided him a written document that I had had legal review and make adjustments. Their legal department reviewed it also, made adjustments to my advantage, and didn't charge me for it. Side benefit. And 7.5 cents a unit is $12,500 that I had not ever seen in a transaction coming my way until then. So, all well and good. The icing on the cake was they managed to keep their metrics very carefully. So they knew what worked, what didn't work, where it came from, because they had a very, very wide distribution. By the way, that 250,000 copies, that's not a number I deal with every day of the week yet either. Notice how I threw yet in there? And it's all context because that 250,000 number, that year, Lillian Vernon was distributing 17 million catalogs. 250,000 was a drop in their bucket. So, with their metrics, they were very generous in reporting back to me that they had experienced a 13% sales increase that they tracked back to that offer of gift with purchase. It was not for sale in that catalog. That's very limited thinking, by the way. It's much more productive and much bigger to go to whoever was involved with the marketing of that catalog. So there you go with a data point that you may want to keep in mind when you notice yourself going to small rather than no, what's the biggest that way that I can help people, including my own business? Because this is about not only helping externally, it's also intended to help you. And if you've taken a vow of poverty, I can't help you.
Yeah.
So, and keep in mind that external distribution is a much bigger pool than employees within a company. Even a gigantic company like Walmart out there with consumers is a much bigger pool to tend to. So I think that that was the example that you were thinking of. It's one of quite a few that I have had the good fortune to be able to do licensing deals with.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's a huge expansion from, again, single copy sales. What now, I do want to just point out a caveat for that particular deal from what you were sharing with us is that you were dealing with a company that was already in the printing game to be.
That's right. And I heard myself, and thank you for adding that. I could not sell print as inexpensively as they could buy it. And I knew that. They were a catalog company. They were dealing with commercial printers for a long time. So
Mhm,
they had a much better opportunity to negotiate or just immediately be told this is the estimate for 250,000 copies.
mhm. So, with that particular caveat aside, for someone listening and wanting to explore this,
Mhm.
typically we as the producer would be the one dealing with the printer and
Well,
cost.
let me stop you. It's not that typical to be doing a licensing deal on a printed or produced version of what that product is. So, for instance, the PDF or an MP3 audio or a video, an MP4, those things are all digital, all downloadable. It's a different can of worms as far as you're not producing anything. You're providing that link. And if you are allowing the licensee to have use of that link, yes, it's tough to monitor how long or cutting it off, the end of it. Because the only way you could is if you hold on to that link and you distribute to their list, which they're very unlikely willing to do.
Got you. Got you. Got you. So, and I just want to also make sure I say this as well, is that this whole conversation you deep dive much more in depth into in the 4 week workshop that's happening soon, happening next month.
Yes, that is. We're doing a 4 week workshop, and it's a 90-minute session each of those 4 Wednesdays that we're doing that in August. And it'll be a lot of interaction among the people who do show up and sign up for that. And there's no question that goes unanswered.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it is, and I will just say for everyone listening, I know all of you, most everyone here is here as a part of my community already. Paulette and I are working together because I am now working on licensing one of my properties, which was my Parisian pastry, just sort of passion project I did last year. And
And what did I keep saying to you every time you and I talked about that?
well, you said several things to me, many I can't repeat because we're,
Some of you can't repeat, I know that. However, it sat collecting dust for a bit,
yes.
and I, as gently as I could and still maintain my East Coastism, said, Rodney, I think it's time for you to consider the possibility, because I don't tell people what to do. I invite them to consider the possibility that there's a gold mine that you already have ownership of. And how about we look at how you can convert that into moolah?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what we're doing.
And the brain has been expanded. We'll talk. But anyway, but okay, cool. What I want to do here is we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I do want to if you give us maybe like 10 minutes, just answer a few questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, 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 great. All right. So I'm going to go through the questions here that I got. Thank you all so much for coming. And let's see. So I'm looking through the questions, and one of the questions that came in was, can tips products include a combination of questions and tips?
Could it? Sure, it could. Is that as useful to people? I think that it would do better to be consistent, because once you've left people with questions, that's not the original intent for this. The original intent for tips is to give them a grounded entry into an area of expertise that may be new or that is more useful now than it might have been in the past. So asking them questions, it's a different function in my thinking. So the answer would be no.
Okay, right.
Oh,
And
and you know what else I didn't say? We didn't say 52 tips is the number that I've landed on now for regularly. And 52 tips because there's 52 weeks in the year. And that opens up all kinds of possibilities for how people can use it
mhm,
and also monetize it.
okay, right. I love that. Next question. What paperweight do you suggest?
We're getting into the weeds here.
Um,
Um, it depends. It depends on what you want to do. I used to do only matte interior pages, and now I only do glossy interior pages. And it could be 60 pounds, it could be 80 pounds. It just depends on what you want to do. And the cover is a much heavier paper. It's cardstock and it's glossy. So it's either going to be 80 or 100, typically 100 pounds.
Okay, okay. This is
And it's saddle stitched, two staples in the spine. Do not try this at home. Your printer will do that as part of the production.
and the goal being is that the booklet can fit inside of a number 10 envelope.
Yes.
Okay, great. Question came in about, and this I don't know, but I'm going to ask the question. You may not know, I don't know the answer to this either. Does Amazon KDP publish booklets? I don't know personally.
Not only do I not know, I think that they don't, because 4 inches by 9 inches is not what they would typically do, they're very good. One of the things I can say without any hesitation, they are very good at what they do. And the reason they are is because they offer a narrow set of offers.
Hmm.
They keep it very narrow so that they can do what they do well. There's a whole lot of things that they do not they do not help you with at all. You
Hmm.
have no idea who buys anything of yours on Amazon, which means you cannot create a relationship. You cannot sell them anything else. If you do, it's happenstance.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and I'm going to say this too to add on to that, because the second question came in was about why would you not want to do bulk sales on Amazon or offer a discount? Well, one of the things I'm going to say about that in general, um,
They don't offer discounting in
no,
bulk.
they don't. That's the first thing. Second thing is, which you all heard me say numerous times, is while I love Amazon, I think they're great for what they do. But again, imagine if you have a purchase order for 1,000+ copies of your booklet and the quantity is not consistent, as some of you have experienced already. The person who asked this question particularly already knows exactly what I'm talking about because they're dealing with that right now, and you don't want to be dealing with that. So that to me in and of itself takes them out of the running because you're not able to like deal with one person you can get on the phone if there's a problem that you can
You know,
troubleshoot with and all of that. You're not going to have that with them. And there's no discounting, to add to what Paulette just said.
and they can wreak havoc without you being able to do a darn thing about it. They can
Mhm.
up the price, they can lower the price, they can just do everything. And I've known recently of several people who have tried to remove their product from Amazon, and it's impossible.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that as an exaggerated statement. I mean,
Mhm.
it's literally impossible.
Mhm. 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 So yeah, so
Be on Amazon for credibility because, yes, it's become a measure of are you out there in the world? However, put it up there for no other reason than exposure.
I also want to add on to that, and I'm not quite sure if the person asking this question is this as part of what the question is can someone go to Amazon and buy like 1,000 copies of our booklet? Well, the first thing is,
It's full price.
yeah, you're going to pay full price. Secondly, because there's no discounting, you're leaving yourself out of the lion's share of the sale.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's the next thing. And you don't know who bought the books or booklets, who placed the order.
That's right.
So that in of itself takes that completely out of the running. You have no control over what's happening from quality to contact to money. So that's why I named this sub conversation Beyond Amazon. I'm not
Right.
poo-pooing it, but we got to think beyond that. So we just have a different thing. Let's see. I want to go and see if there's any more questions, but let me also make sure we covered all the interview questions. Um, oh, let's get back to licensing for a few minutes, if you don't mind. What
Oh,
kind of things can you license? Can we
oh,
license?
you can license just about anything that can be printed and beyond. And when I say printed, um, there are a few things that a licensing deal does not work for, or where you can't get your name known. And I'll give you that last one first. At one point, I was aware of the fact that, and keep in mind, my booklet was about organizing. I thought to myself, and I'm going to give you a couple of quick side trips in this one. I thought Staples, the office supply store, would be an ideal client for me. And at the same time, that day I had phone paralysis, meaning, and for those of you that are old enough to know, phones did have a dial on them, a round dial. And I was so scared. I don't know what I was afraid of, but I was lacking in confidence for sure. So for 2 hours, now I'm a pretty strong-natured person. For 2 hours, I would dial, literally dial up to, but not including the last digit of the phone number at headquarters in Massachusetts for Staples. Finally, I said a few words were not deleted from my thinking, and I said, just let the thing go through. Just let it go. Well, the universe does have a sense of humor because that day the person I needed to talk to was not in the office. So I laughed heartily and said, yeah, yeah, how's that working for you? Um, but at any rate, what I also knew was that Staples was doing a lot of radio advertising. This organizing moment brought to you by was something that made total sense to me. So I was encouraging my students, especially ones that were organizers, to see about licensing the use of the content into the advertising that Staples was already doing, already paying for, where it could be a short tip like take the biggest thing out of the pile first. That immediately shrinks the pile and motivates you. That's an organizing tip. It takes not even 15 seconds. And with the tag on it, this organizing moment brought to you by XYZ Company, Staples, or whoever. You can't get your name on that. You can't. That organizing moment was created by Paulette Ensign. No, it's just that's not accurate, appropriate, available. Otherwise, I had for a long time, and it worked for me. I said one non-negotiable is my name has to show up on everything, or we don't do business. Now that I stuck to my guns. There was a company who produced these miniature size um, flip books, for lack of a better word. And they produced these things in that same form in all kinds of different topics. And the rule within promotional products industry is that they never, truly never allow any indication of the company who is distributing these because it cuts out the middleman, it cuts out their salesperson. I said, my rule in my business that I own is my name has to show up someplace. I don't care if that's all that it is. Now, I'm fortunate to have a unique enough name. You could find me if you need to. So at that point, I was ready to walk away from the sale. And they came back and they put it in 0 point size that you needed a really strong magnifying glass to be able to see the name. But yes, so the kinds of things that you can, I mean, there's easily 52 things that you can license. Everything from your system for doing something and including any of the informational products that you've created, whether it's a book, a part of a book, an audio, a video that is yours, that you own that information. You also can sell any of your artwork if you've created anything that's proprietary, that's yours. You can license out just about anything that you can say that you've created it or that you have ownership of the creation, where somebody else sold the rights to you. It can be a big painting. It can be literally, and I have handouts for when I do teach this information in greater depth that show you 52 ways to use the content. And another handout, list of what um, what content you've got, what intellectual property do you have that's licensable? And it's way more than any one person is likely to do.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that you have really expanded my mind around embracing around licensing for my book. Because I was just thinking about the book in and of itself as its entirety, but there's a lot more around this that you've introduced me to that I can do with this, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah.
also, I gave you grief. I mean, I mentioned my opinion about the difficulty in making sales with the size of the book, the number of pages in it,
Mhm.
that you have multiple products within all those pages. that you can separate out, which is typically a great idea because first of all, you've got more things to be able to offer.
Mhm.
Second of all, you've got the ability for somebody to test generically, is a portion of that big publication going to accomplish my marketing goals? And then they'll come back and they'll want a whole lot more.
And there's a lot more with this. I'll pick this up again because there's a lot more that you and I have been discussing about this. I mean, that I'm telling you, I was like, I never thought about that. I never thought about that. I mean, it's a whole new model.
Yeah,
And
and to be fair, Rodney, I didn't come out of my mother knowing all this. It took me over 3 decades.
you know, no, I mean, we all are collective of our experiences, and
Yep.
I've known about this, but I didn't know how to structure those kinds of deals. And that's the other part I want to say about this is that it's one thing to intellectualize by reading
Hmm.
something about it. It's another thing to actually have the boots on the ground, hand-on tactical, like, okay, this is an opportunity that's come across my desk. And in the excitement, because we all have taken we haven't taken that vow of poverty. Oh, they want to offer me, $10,000 for my thing, but is that a good deal?
Right, right.
And in our excitement to get the check, we may be actually signing away more than,
Yeah,
uh, than we realize. And so,
leaving a lot of money on the table.
exactly, exactly. What I'm going to do here is I've got one more question for you around licensing, and then it was around pricing.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that a little
it
bit.
is the Wild West with pricing when it comes to pricing on licenses. And what I have found is that there are questions that can be asked of the potential licensee, who's the buyer, that will help guide you. Because some people have already had some experiences with licensing somebody's content. In fact, that happens more than you might think. There's also experiences where somebody's got already in mind a range of pricing. If you ask them what their budget is, they're not going to tell you
Mhm,
because that's just not the way a lot of negotiations work. However, once you have an idea of some questions to get the conversation going, and there's one question that I have an answer for that really disarms anybody who's trying to hold that number close to the vest. And they go, "Oh, no, no, we were thinking of this number." And that's the kind of stuff that you're going to want to learn from me during the 4 sessions that we're going to be doing in August
mhm,
because it's so simple and yet you just you think of when you think of it, if you think of it. That was one of those things that for all the people that I know who are involved in exchanging their products for payment, you notice I did not use SELL. They
mhm,
are exchanging their product, their knowledge for payment.
mhm,
I have yet to find any of them who have thought about that particular approach that I have come upon that I'm more than happy to share with you in August.
mhm. I just popped the link in the chat for that, and I'll also follow this up by email. I do want to just say this one thing, and I'm going to be really clear what I'm going to say right now because I'm not trying to hard sell this, but I'm
Hmm.
going to tell you, all of you what listening, watching this. I was so excited about the conversation that Paulette and I had around this topic. She shared some information with me that completely blew my mind. I mean, she's already been talking to me about my book, but was kind of okay, it was cool, whatever. I was really kind of blowing it off, to be honest with you. Then she shared an article with me that completely blew my mind. Of course, and I'm a researcher, so I went down the rabbit hole and went digging for more information about the market for this particular book project that I have. And I was talking about one of those like moments. So of course I got excited. And I went to ChatGPT, which is we all love, many of you here, we love us some ChatGPT. So I went in doing all my little research and putting all my information in because I had discovered all this new stuff and I was all excited. And it actually gave me numbers. That's why the last question we asked Paulette was about pricing. This segues into this. And so I copied everything that ChatGPT gave me and put it up in a document. And I sent it to Paulette for her to kind of glance at.
And I went really roundabout in my response to you, didn't I?
Well, it
No,
wasn't, so it was a Sunday, and I typically don't do, business calls or anything like that on a Sunday,
nor do I.
nor does she. But when I sent the numbers, when I sent what I was so excited about, not only did she not respond to my email, she called me like, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. And I was like, okay. And
Do you want to tell what that was that I was going no, no, no about generically?
well, the pricing,
It
was,
was
but
way below what your value is. I
yeah,
said no more of those digits.
yeah,
That he had more digits on.
yeah. But it wasn't just the numbers. I also want to make sure I say this part
Yeah,
too. It
yeah.
wasn't just the numbers, and that was a big part of it. The numbers were too low, but the things that ChatGPT suggested that I offer.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did this on my own without having someone with this much experience on this subject, having done it boots on the ground and put these deals together, not only would I would have left a lot of money on the table, I would have really screwed myself. And because I have no problem talking about something if I'm excited about it. But the other side of the table would have been like, he's excited, he's hungry, we'll give him anything and he'll take it. you know,
Yep.
and that's what can happen. So um, I just want to leave you with that one piece of it is that we don't have I don't have that level of experience around this, which is why this, association and alignment with Paulette is so important because I just don't want any of us to be in that onesie twosie sales cycle that we buy into. Not to say it's bad. I'm not putting down Amazon. I'm not going to position it that way, but there's a lot more out there for
Mm.
us. So it can be either or it can be that and this.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted to leave everyone with this as we wrap up our
That's a
time.
perfect ending because I typically will say that everything that I bring to the table is an and, not an or. Rodney, this has been fun. It's always fun talking to you.
Me too. Me too. I hope you all got a lot of inspiration and value out of this. Of course, it's already up on YouTube, so this is the replay. It's already here. Do watch this again. And if you have any questions, we're starting on the workshop starts on August the what is it, the 4th?
It's the
Yeah,
first Wednesday in August,
the first Wednesday in August. Yes.
and it will
And
go for three more Wednesdays after that.
okay,
So it is
the
the
6th is
sixth. The
the 6th.
sixth is the first one. August 6th.
And there's a payment plan there if you want to check that out. And again, if you have any questions for me about any of this, feel free to reach out about it. But I would just say to all of you watching, listening, whether replay or live, is do give this serious consideration. You've invested already a ton of time and resources and money into getting your product out there. We all also too are running businesses and we have to run our businesses like businesses, and that means that we need to always be expanding our knowledge base and our support systems and our information so that we can get our work that we've worked so hard for into the hands of the people who really want and need it. So do not sleep on this. I can't encourage you highly enough. Don't sleep on this. All right, Paul, did you have any last questions for us or comments?
I have no last question, but I always have a comment. You know that
Yes, you do.
we will be cutting off the number of people that are going to be able to register so that we can provide really terrific individualized attention to you throughout the 4 weeks. So that is important for you to know. And I don't think the price is going to stay what it is for a whole lot longer.
Mm. Yep.
But
So
I'm delighted anybody who has either been with us today live or is watching and listening to the replay. If now is the time for you, great. It might not be, and that's okay too. Because I'm planning to live a very long, healthy life and keep learning and keep sharing.
thank you, Poet. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Rodney.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. So you have a good rest of your day. And like, again, if you have any questions for me, reach out and hope to see you in August at the workshop. All right. Take care. Stop the